Before the Nintendo Switch, before the DS, there was the Game Boy. This little gray brick wasn't just a handheld console, it was a gaming revolution. But did you know the Game Boy was almost cancelled? Or that Tetris saved it from failure? Stick around because we're diving into the untold secrets of the Game Boy, the console that changed gaming forever. When the Game Boy was first announced in 1989, critics laughed at it. Compared to the flashy Sega Game Gear, the Game Boy looked ancient. A tiny greenish screen? No backlight? It didn't even have color. Nintendo's own executives doubted it would succeed. But Nintendo's secret weapon? Battery life. While the Game Gear lasted about 3 hours, the Game Boy could run for 30+ hours on just 4 AA batteries. And that made all the difference. Now, what really put the Game Boy on the map? Tetris. The simple but addictive puzzle game became an instant obsession. But get this, Nintendo almost didn't include it. The rights to Tetris were a complete mess. The game was created in the Soviet Union, and multiple companies fought over who could release it. But Nintendo won the battle, and in 1989, they bundled Tetris with every Game Boy. The result? Game Boy sold out instantly. Without Tetris, the Game Boy might have failed. But thanks to one of the greatest puzzle games of all time, it became a global sensation. And just when the Game Boy started to slow down in sales, along came Pokémon. In 1996, Pokémon Red and Blue took over the world. But here's the craziest part, Nintendo didn't even think it would be a big deal. But thanks to the Game Boy Link cable, players could trade Pokémon with their friends for the first time ever. No internet needed, just a cable. And that's what made Pokémon a cultural phenomenon. By 1998, half of all Game Boy owners had Pokémon. The franchise became bigger than anyone could have imagined, and Game Boy suddenly went from that old handheld to the console every kid needed. Did you know the Game Boy had a camera and a printer? Yes, Nintendo basically invented handheld selfies back in 1998. The Game Boy camera let you take pixelated black and white photos, and print them out with thermal paper on the Game Boy printer. But here's the weird part, Nintendo hid some super creepy faces in the Game Boy camera. If you clicked the wrong menu option, you'd be greeted with a disturbing glitchy face saying, "Who are you?" Imagine seeing this as a kid in 1998. Nightmare fuel. You think modern consoles are tough? The Game Boy was bulletproof. One Game Boy survived a bombing during the Gulf War and still worked. It's literally on display at the Nintendo World Store in New York. People have tried running over Game Boys with cars, throwing them off buildings, even dunking them in water, and most of them still work. Try doing that with a modern console. The Game Boy wasn't just a handheld, it was the beginning of portable gaming as we know it. Without it, we wouldn't have the Nintendo DS, the Switch, or even mobile gaming as we know it. So next time you pick up your phone to play a game, thank the Game Boy. Now tell me, what's your best Game Boy memory? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more retro gaming content.